She has no idea who
All
he
right,
is.
chat. Let's get to it. Let's get to Malding with Mike. Hasan being way too nice to Pod Save America. Mike was so frustrated to watch. It was masterclass stuff from Hasan. This fool was talking to struck me as the most willfully ignorant people. He's not ignorant. He's not ignorant. He just doesn't want to talk about the issues with a leftist because a liberal, there's two types of liberals in the world. The first type of liberal is just kind of a well-meaning person who is generically progressive and thinks the Democrats are the most progressive you can be. And I trust my leaders when they tell me that the best way to make America great is to do a tax credit for small businesses. You know, they're the type of person you find at, you know, your local soup kitchen handing out fucking bowls and, you know, the people volunteering to clean up the side of the fucking highway from litter, okay? Really nice, well-meaning people, salt of the earth, we love them, NPR tote bags, and, you know, Subaru Outbacks, okay? We love these people. They're awesome. Many of our relatives are these people. Then there are the liberals like on Pod Save America. These are demons straight from hell. These are people who understand that liberalism represents a capitalist ideology, which is the velvet glove over the iron fist. These are the people that understand that there are alternative policies significantly to their left that would harm the capitalist class while uplifting the working class and the middle classes. They understand that they are trading lives for profit. They understand that the American hegemony is built on crimes against humanity. They understand that capitalist domination, neoliberal domination, destroyed millions and is destroying millions of lives. And they don't care because they think those people are cattle who deserve it. And that the elite of the neoliberalism are an elite of the meritocracy, and therefore they deserve it all. And you deserve what they deign to give you. That is what these guys are. That's what the Pod Save America guys are. That's what Joe Biden is. That's what Barack Obama is. They are demons from the pit of hell. They are servants of Mammon. They are they are as evil as any fascist. And they're slimy. Malcolm X did the parable of the fox and the wolf, where he basically said that a liberal is just a fox that you mistake as a friend. A fox is a predator, and his mouth curves in a smile, so you think he's being friendly.
But being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. Mm-hmm. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. Mm-hmm. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate. I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, mm-hmm. economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, mm-hmm. who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's watch Hasan deal with these fucking people.
Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm John Lovett, and guest hosting with me today is the massively popular streamer Leftist Dumbass himself. You just self-described.
That's okay, sure, fair. I say himbo, but damn.
Okay. Hasan Piker, welcome back.
It's good to be back. Thank you for having me.
After my conversation with Hasan, you'll hear my conversation with Seth Moulton. We talked about the Democratic Party. We talked about the controversy over his comments around trans athletes. Also on the feed right now, you can hear Dan's conversation with Jenna Malley Dillon, Quentin Folks, David Plouffe, and Stephanie Cutter about what went wrong in the Harris campaign. We're having a bunch of conversations about what we learned from the election, where we go from here, with a bunch of different voices, one of which is here today. People are mad, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But let's start with this.
It was Big Tent.
It's a big tent. It's a big tent. All
Got
right.
Dick Cheney in it.
It's got Dick Cheney in it. It's got Hasan Piker in it.
I don't think so.
It's got Dan Osborne in it. It's got Seth Moulton in it.
I think not.
Yeah. You know, Tent shouldn't maybe feature Dick Cheney in it, but you know, everybody else I can have a conversation with.
Great. All right.
I think Dick Cheney being in it, you try to move the tent over to have Dick Cheney in it. I'm over here. I'm out of the tent. I'm not in that tent. You're in that tent. You're in that tent. Hillary Clinton's in that tent. Joe Biden's in that tent. I'm not in that tent. You're in that tent. I'm not in that tent. I'm pissing into that tent. That's how I would have started.
Now, look, the main pastime on the left, other than being mad for the last few weeks, is everyone saying how right they were all along about Democrats being out of touch and bound to lose.
Arrest me. Sorry. So I sat at this chair.
Okay, motherfucker. I was right. I was the right one. You motherfucker were buying Edigermentum's bullshit. Okay, let's get this right. Let's get this right. I was right. The rest of you were like, it's not even a turn. It's not. Oh, Edigermentum looked at the Washington State primaries. And I said, that's fucking snake oil. This is ridiculous. This is not even close to an argument. What the fuck are you talking about? And I explained to you exactly why that is, which was what? High propensity, upscale, college educated, high conscientiousness voters show up in midterms and they show up in special elections. They were traditionally Republican leaning. They're now Democratic leaning. It shows you absolutely nothing about general elections during the presidency, which is the highest turnout election with the lowest propensity voters. Shut the fuck up. That's stupid. I was completely right. My analysis was not only correct, it nailed it to a fucking T. I got 49 out of 50 states right. I can't believe I doubted myself. I didn't want to just say Trump is going to win every state because I felt like I was being that would be too doomer. So I was like, all right, what state do I think will be the closest? And I picked Wisconsin to be with Harris. It was the closest state, but she also lost it. I was completely fucking right. I only regret that I didn't do the clean sweep the other way. Honestly, I'm kind of glad I did it because people would have dismissed it more. People like you are why she lost. You're goddamn right. I didn't vote for her. I fucking love that. And I will never, ever, 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 ever let you forget it. I made Kamala Harris lose, and I'm going to make the next Democrat lose if you don't kiss my fucking ass, you little bitch. It's my fault. I decided she was gonna lose. It was my decision. I'm the most important voter. You're all not important compared to me. This is me, chat. This was me on election night.
Strike to claim it. A strike to claim it. And he got it!
That is right, I did it! That's number 5! Are you kidding me? That's right! Who do you think you are? I am! Damn it right!
All right, let's keep going.
Well, maybe not at this chair, but I had the offline interview with John. I think a month before the election, and a lot of the concerns that I brought up to him, it seemingly came across as somewhat prescient, where people went back to the footage, and I've been seeing comments that were rather positive about, like, you know, okay, he said a lot of stuff there that was objectively correct seeming.
Yeah, I want to talk about one aspect of that, which is that you were saying, others were saying that, hey, like Trump going on Rogan, Trump going on Theo Von, like something is happening here, and we need to understand it.
I could see
it. We need to address it. It's real. And I remember, like, my experience, it's like seared in my mind of Trump being on Joe Rogan because of how, like, my path of understanding it, because what I saw first were a bunch of people taking clips and saying, wow, Rogan really didn't like Trump. Trump is a mess on this show. He comes across terribly. Rogan was like kind of giving Trump space to hang himself rhetorically. And then I watch it and I'm like, Trump did fucking great in this interview.
Yeah, he's very telegenic.
Well, everybody likes to do clips. Everybody likes to do bad faith clips because there's two types of people in the world. There are short form content of users and there's long form content users. Like on the internet, there are two types of people. If you are a short form content user, if you're a Twitter user and a TikTok user, you'd want things that are so fucking short, nothing of substance can ever be said. Right? And then you have long form people. These are your podcast listeners and your stream watchers. These people are watching, you're getting down into the fucking weeds. And the problem is the short form content viewers know they're inferior. They know they suck, okay? They're embarrassed about being ADHD brain rotted. And so what do is in order to curry favor with the short form content users, they go to the long form content, they scrub through hours and hours and hours of shit to try to find 10 seconds they can take out of context and post onto their shitty, short form content mills of infinite scrolls and infinite attention and nothing of substance. So that is clips out of context that is the tribute that Vice, short form content, pledges to virtue, which is long form content. Long form content, book readers, podcast listeners, stream watchers in short form content, tweeters, blue sky skeeters, and TikTokers and YouTube shorts, Instagram reels out. You guys are out. You're fucking out. That's the reality. So people were like, oh yeah, Donald Trump looks so stupid. And they got a clip. In reality, Joe Rogan he's got the long form listeners. And they liked him.
Yeah, he definitely rambles on. He likes to call it the weave. Joe Rogan made fun of him for that a little bit in the process. But like, there is something to be said about a relatively telegenic person who is able to portray himself as, I like to call it honestly dishonest, where like everybody knows he's a bit of a scumbag, but he's your scumbag. And he's able to get that across to a lot of people. And
well, no. I don't think that's quite right. Like, to disagree with Hasan, it's just bias. That's all it is. He's inside people's empathetic circles. They're parasocial. Like, the lies that we tell are justified. The lies that you tell are mortal sins. Like, that's just all it is these people like him, so they rationalize his shit. That's it. You rationalize the shit that people you like do. I don't do that, which is why I am a social misfit in many ways. Because when somebody does something fucked up, I'm just like, you did something that was fucked up. Don't do that. And I don't go like, oh, well, my friend did it, which makes it okay.
I don't think that there is really anyone with that level of television presence on the Democratic Party front. I think like the most skilled orator in the Democratic Party's ranks in the last couple of decades was obviously Barack Obama. And outside of that, I think like in a lot of instances, purely from an optics point of view, Democrats track as like technocratic, elitist, too serious about everything that they talk about. And there's certainly a lot of that on the Republican Party side as well. And we've seen failed initiatives from establishment Republicans that tried to recreate the Trump phenomenon with the likes of Ron DeSantis, and that was a massive failure. But ultimately, I think this goes beyond podcasts. This is something that I've been talking about quite frequently. I know the podcast thing is like the most, like that's the one that got everyone's attention, but I said this on CNN.
But the reason why the podcast thing what got everybody's attention is because it doesn't mean that anybody needs to get fired, right? Nobody has to lose influence. Nobody has to get fired. It's just a different decision that the same people who are in positions of power today make about where to spend their money. Let's spend less money on radio ads and let's spend money on podcasting. Let's spend a little bit less money on TV and let's spend it on streamers. Let's spend a little bit less money on direct mail and let's spend it on YouTube shorts or whatever the fuck. That's all it is. The reason why they're focusing on this is because it doesn't require the Democratic Party to change at all, just make slightly different tactical decisions, right? Whereas the Democratic Party needs to change its essence a bit and what it stands for.
Last night that you can't really podcast your way out of this problem. Like having, there was that one tweet saying like, oh, we just have 100 Pod Save Americas, but they all have to look like Hasan. Like that's not how this works.
Oh, you think that one tweet might have been wrong? But the yeah, like I guess so. I agree with that. It became the couple kind of like, I don't know, like just have had this devastating loss to Trump, and everybody's looking for these sort of little explanations that all feel like they just feel silly. Like, oh, we need a Joe Rogan of the left, and even saying like I don't even want to talk about how stupid that is anymore because even that has become stupid. But I do agree that like people are like, oh well, she should have gone on Rogan. All right, yeah, sure. I think so too.
That would not have changed the outcome of this election.
There's a larger problem to what you're getting at, which is like, why don't we have figures and where like we think they would do great on that show? And why is someone like Joe Rogan now, who was 4 years ago open to Bernie, now suddenly open to Trump? Like that's the deeper problem. Like you look at like successful Democratic messengers or progressive messengers over the last like decades, and you think, all right, well, Bill Clinton obviously was successful and he like ran against the Democratic Party in some way. Barack Obama did the same thing. Bernie does the same thing. AOC does the same thing. I'm not talking about on policy.
You don't mean it like also in the same direction of running against?
No, but running against the establishment in some way. And just saying, and the reason I connect them is because they all did something which is demonstrated that they were not part of the Democratic establishment, both like on policy and rhetorically, right? Like that's what they all did. And I'm just wondering like what, like the one place where like I know you like find, there's a place where there's like kind of an alignment of like the Seth Moulton critique of the Democratic Party and the lefty critique of the Democratic Party, which is just like, it's fucking annoying and like kind of, I don't know, like pedantic in some way.
It's an incorrect interpretation, an incorrect autopsy to look back at a thing that the Democratic Party did not do at all and then say it's actually that reason. It's not anything that we did so far. It's not.
Yeah, like, well, okay, this is actually, I gotta pause it again because this is such a good point. One of the things that I find really interesting, and I think it's an authoritarian turn in liberalism, and you'll see people like Destiny who are very authoritarian minded kind of doing it, which is the idea that the Democrats are responsible for anything anybody says that's on the quote left, right? So if some anarchist in Seattle somewhere says abolish the police, then a Democrat running in rural Maine is now responsible for there being a protester saying abolish the police somewhere. Do you get what I mean? So for the Democrat in rural Maine to win, he has to go censor and shut up the protester in Seattle, right? Like, oh, nobody's allowed to run on these radical left-wing positions, because if these radical left-wing positions exist anywhere, well, then the centrist liberal who doesn't run on any of those positions and spends all their time shitting on that lefty is actually going to be held responsible by the voters for that position. And that is so fundamentally illiberal, so fundamentally anti-democratic, so fundamentally like authoritarian brain broken that it's like not a surprise that someone as dim as Destiny would fall into that trap, right? Like, I don't give a shit if Seth Moulton says we want to do tax cuts on the rich, except so much as he holds a position of power and I want to stop him from doing that. But, some sort of like basement dwelling Redditor who's posts on neoliberal talking about how much he loves Margaret Thatcher, I don't give a shit about that. It has nothing to do with me. But yet the liberals are incredibly threatened by even the existence of voices presenting left-wing opinions. Like, look at Destiny right now. Like Destiny is such a good microcosm of the insecurity and inferiority of these liberal people. Like, he's out there, and you know, obviously he'll never interface with what I say on politics because he can't. He absolutely cannot do it, and every single one of his viewers knows that. The reason why he's so obsessed with deplatforming Hasan is he says Hasan is anti-American and is doing terrorist propaganda. Now, let's say, for an example, that was true. Let's just stipulate that for the purpose of argument. There is something called the First Amendment to the Constitution, which says freedom of speech, right? Freedom of speech, marketplace of ideas. If Hasan goes out there and says America is harmful to the world, you know, it's doing damage with its foreign policy, his argument isn't to say, no, actually that's wrong, here's why America's good. His argument is, we need to arrest Hasan and shut him up. Doesn't that show you the insecurity and inferiority of the liberal position, where they can't defend the United States, for example, supporting a military coup of Pakistan that's going on right now to overturn the democratically elected government? Why are they doing a coup in Pakistan? Why is the U.S. supporting a coup in Pakistan? Because the president was skeptical of America. He didn't want to be completely a American puppet. He wanted Pakistan to chart its own course, independent of its traditional American patronage. The United States of America gives billions of dollars of direct military aid to the Pakistani government. And he was saying, no, we need to chart our own course. Military coup. Mohammad Mossadegh, same thing in Iran, military coup. Basically, the United States of America does not believe in democracy. Egypt is another example, military coup. We give billions of dollars and we waive all the human rights regulations that are in our laws for Egypt. Like, this is the stuff that if America was a source or font of democracy like it claims to be, it would not do, because it is wrong. And the other aspect of that, beyond it being wrong, I don't even care that it's wrong, honestly. What I care about is that it actually damages humanity and it damages America. 9/11 happened because of interferences like this. Al-Qaeda exists. ISIS exists. These wars in the Middle East, this destabilization, the blowback that we receive, the trillions of dollars of our money that we waste, all come back to these idiotic interventionist programs, imperialist programs that do not raise the standard of living of Americans. Destiny is a follower of McCarthyism. Well, he's too dim to be a follower of McCarthyism, honestly. As an addendum to what I said earlier about you not being able to show the autism, is that Hasan's attitude is why his audience has grown so large that the worms like this asshole cannot ignore him. The pod save guys are parasites that crawl up Hasan's dick when he jumps in the pool of success. They resent that they have to interview this guy, but simultaneously are so power driven that the best thing they can do is host him to disparage him, but can't. Oh no, absolutely right. Hasan brings up social housing toward the end of this, and the liberal stops dead in his tracks as if he just said the N-word. They do not want these ideas to be thinkable by the base. Absolutely. Why do you think they hate Medicare for all? There was a famous episode on Pod Save America where they were like, not supporting Medicare for all doesn't mean you aren't progressive. We all have the goal. Everyone has access to healthcare. So just because you don't support Medicare for all doesn't mean you're not a progressive. And it's like, wait a minute. What's progressive about supporting private health insurance? Their answer is they can't justify their positions on the merits.
Policy arguments in favor of a Medicare access approach as opposed to a Medicare for all approach that is not ideological in the sense that it doesn't make you less liberal and it doesn't make you less progressive to view it as a positive outcome. The ultimate goal here is not a process one. It is not, a private healthcare plan versus a Medicare plan.
That we tack to the right over and over again, despite people like myself and many others saying, like, don't do this. You're going to hemorrhage the base. You're going to hemorrhage the base of support. You are going to cut away at your turnout. You're going to cut across many different constituencies that you rely on to create an effective coalition. And it's a very dangerous gamble to assume that you can decouple a lot of these people in the suburbs, a lot of like white women specifically, away from the Republican Party and vote for you instead. I know that they're high propensity voters, but it doesn't matter. There's still plenty of low propensity voters that you have to rely on to win. And that's precisely what the Democratic Party did. They hyper-focused on these key constituencies, despite the fact that polls were seemingly deadlocked after $30 million of ad spend in key suburbs, right? Like, it showed, at least, I said this time and time again, it showed someone from the outside looking in that the message was not working. And you can have the best ground game possible. You can have, hundreds of thousands of people all across the country door knocking. But if the top-down message that you're communicating is not resonating with people, then you're not going to be able to win an election. You're not going to have the effective turnout necessary to win this election. And that is precisely what happened. Now, does that mean that Trump's messaging was good? Of course not. It wasn't. It was actually pretty bad. And I would even go so far as to say the anti-trans ads were actually a distraction and not good. It was only effective in the DC bubble, I think, and the consultant bubble and the media class that saw those ads and were like, oh my God, this is an incredible ad. Like, they really ruined Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris had a silly answer to an ACLU questionnaire, okay? That just shows that she is not the most experienced politician. This was all the way back in, I believe, 2020, right? She literally had to drop out of the primary anyway at that time. That's one thing, okay? But that should not be a campaign killer. If you personally think that that's a campaign killer, then your campaign is weak. This message across the board should never be able to end a single campaign. Then Teflon Don is real. I mean, the man had the grab him by the pussy tape come out as the October surprise in 2016, and he still won. And since then, there's been a litany of different controversies, including but not limited to straight up undermining American democracy by doing January 6th. And yet, people are still voting for him. And one must ask the question, why? And I think overall, the same exact problems that persisted in 2016 when the economy was seemingly very good, right? Especially as opposed to like the post-COVID economy and its recovery. People were still very frustrated with what was going on. The notion that in the wealthiest nation on earth, we have 600,000 people sleeping outside every night. The idea that we have the concept of medical bankruptcy is an insane phenomenon that doesn't exist in any other OECD nation. Like, the fact that 40% of the American public don't or 60% of the American public doesn't have $400 in emergency spending, like, these are all very real economic anxieties. I'm using that term specifically because it's one thing that people like to hyper focus on, that creates volatility, that creates instability, and it creates a base of angry people. And if the Democratic Party is not addressing that anger and addressing their material problems and earnestly telling them, like, we're going to fix that shit, okay? And the other side is looking at that anger and saying, we're going to channel your anger. You have every right to be angry. And you know who you should be angry at? Those who have less than you. You know who you should be angry at? The working poor, the homeless people that are doing crimes left and right, Black and brown people, undocumented migrants that are doing incredible amounts of crimes. They're killing hundreds of thousands of Americans, and trans people. And the Democratic Party only cares about those people and they don't care about you. And that message resonates with a base of support, not because they are intrinsically evil. That message resonates with a base of support because they're angry. And one of the two major parties is not even remotely interested in addressing that anger and trying to tell them what the solution to that anger actually is and what the real problem is.
So I want to break that into kind of how we the Democratic brand, how we message and all, but also on the policy front. So Joe Biden wins. He tries to kind of build consensus with Bernie. He brings in AOC. He goes to the left on antitrust. He does.
Okay. Participation trophy politics in. This is something that I'm trying. This is my idea That is 100% my idea. If you hear anybody else saying it, they stole it from me. Okay. Participation trophy politics is, I tried, I gestured, I made some sort of bill on this topic. Why am I not getting credit? As opposed to looking at the problem and seeing if the problem is getting noticeably better. Democrats don't want to do that. Democrats do not want to do that. They do not want to look and see, oh, homelessness went up, housing is more unaffordable, more people are saying the economy is bad for them, unionization rate record low, most oil produced ever, carbon, the carbon in the atmosphere spiking even faster. Like, they don't want to actually look at, time spent in congestion. I would love to have that be a policy. I'm going to reduce the amount of congestion in America. I'm going to make it so that when you're on the highway, you're driving highway speeds. Things that would, I'm going to make sure that there's no foul water in America, that when you turn on the water at your tap at home, clean, pure water comes out. Like some actual fucking concrete, measurable, real shit. I'm going to make it that when you get on an airplane, you're not sitting in the taxiway for 45 fucking minutes before you take off. Like, I'm actually going to make your life visibly better. I'm actually going to show you, hey, when Democrats are in office, I got a brand new post office. I've got a brand new fucking metro station opening up across the street from my apartment. I've got a new hospital over here. The school, college tuition dropped by 50% because of their new subsidies. Blah, 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 blah. Point to the lives being improved. That's not how Democrats think. Democrats think, well, if we did a tax credit, and you didn't take advantage of the tax credit, that's your own fault. Why are you mad at us?
The Inflation Reduction Act, he does a post-COVID relief bill. He cancels as much debt as he can legally, even though the court is trying to stop him. Mm-hmm. Before the last year, what my view of this is Joe Biden, this consensus Democrat, right? Actually to the right of the consensus for most of his career, kind of somebody that had to be kind of pulled to where the party was going, did something extraordinary, which is he adapted, he changed, he governed in a much more progressive way than I think probably than I expected. I hope that you expected.
Oh, absolutely.
And it seems as though whether it's because people didn't feel it or people didn't believe it, or the way Democrats talk about policy is ineffective. It didn't seem to matter in terms of how people viewed the Democratic response to the economy, right? They were so angry about inflation. They were angry about a bunch of other issues, and it really didn't matter what Joe Biden said or what Kamala Harris said. They were held responsible. And I'm just wondering how you explain that, right? It seems as though Joe Biden tried to listen to this exact critique, mm-hmm. and it didn't matter.
So yes and no. I do agree. There are plenty of things that Joe Biden did, like beefing up the NLRB and letting the FTC rain hell upon mm-hmm. these monopolies. There's two issues there, though.
Oh my God, chat. As we were watching this, Pod Save America posted this. They are trying to get... They're trying to get fucking juice from his meat. They're trying to milk his meat shot. This is more shameless than Hasan. At least this is Hasan's body that he worked for, right? At least Hasan worked out for that. They're just outright milking somebody else's meat shot. I refuse to retweet that one.
One is, I think, something that you will agree with as well, that the Democrats don't campaign year-round in the same way that Republicans do on key issues, and they do have a massive communication problem. That could potentially be solved by having a more robust ecosystem and more collaboration with even the likes of yourself and maybe even someone like myself as well. And they need to always be on. They need to always be counter messaging against the anti-immigration sentiment. I went back and looked at my commentary from February of 2021 when the story of the Customs and Border Patrol Haitian migrants getting whipped by horseback Customs and Border Patrol people, officers was in the news. And I remember talking about how the Republicans are going to keep hitting the immigrants are doing crime note over and over again because that's the one thing that they have. And it's built around a complete falsehood that undocumented migrants are responsible for incredible amounts of crime. It's not correct. There is no data to suggest this. The data actually shows the exact opposite. Undocumented migrants are your neighbors. They contribute to the economy in very meaningful ways, and they very rarely take anything in return. Why is the Democratic Party not pushing this counter narrative? And they never did. Instead of pushing that counter narrative, which is based in truth, and talk about how undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens are, or that fentanyl being trafficked across the U.S. borders are actually not coming in the knapsack of a otherwise law-abiding abuela, but instead it's coming from regular points of entry trafficked by American citizens. 90% of the people that are being apprehended for chemical compounds necessary for fentanyl or direct drugs that they're trafficking across the border are American citizens. Like this does not track with the narrative that people believe, because the narrative is dominated by the right on this issue. They should have been counter messaging against that, and they should have been putting bills forward in defense of the moves that, for example, Governor Greg Abbott was engaging in Ron DeSantis. I said this even back then, that this is actually a fantastic opportunity for the federal government to show that there is a more tolerant approach, that one, they should have immediately pursued Governor Greg Abbott legally and arrested him for human trafficking and tried to prosecute him for human trafficking. I don't care if it's a constitutional crisis or not. All of this stuff was insanely messed up, and the federal government dropped the ball. I think the Biden administration dropped the ball by not adding additional funds immediately, sending additional funds immediately to places like Chicago and New York, and to figure out a better way to transition a lot of these people and integrate them into the American labor force. And instead, they just got stuck in this like legal limbo for no reason.
So
Everything, well, that's because these Democrats have no beliefs. The thing that Hasan is leaving off, this is very good, but he's leaving off the most important thing, which is, why did Joe Biden pursue Donald Trump's foreign policy on Cuba and Venezuela? When Donald Trump increased the sanction on Cuba and Venezuela during the pandemic to do what he called maximum pressure, why did Joe Biden continue that? When Russia invaded Ukraine and Europe was forced to cut off oil and gas from Russia, why didn't Biden remove sanctions from Venezuela, remove sanctions from Cuba, let those countries' economies function, pursue Obama's policies of constructive engagement with Cuba, lift the sanctions, allow trade, allow travel? That's where millions upon millions of immigrants have come from. Venezuela and fucking Cuba. And the other place, Haiti. Can we stop blocking Haiti from raising the minimum wage and the textile factories like Hillary Clinton did? Hillary Clinton fought the Haitian government passed, I think it was unanimously or something like that, to raise the minimum wage in the textile sweatshops in Haiti. And the American government, led by Hillary Clinton, intervened to prevent it. Let me see if I can bring it up, just so you know I'm not bullshitting you. Haiti minimum wage, Hillary Clinton. Like, this is the type of story that you never hear. In Haiti, a factory where big money, State Department, and the Clintons meet. Expert. Earthquake reconstruction failed to build Haiti back better. Bill and Hillary Clinton have hailed the factory churning out Old Navy sweatshirts in an industrial park here as a shining achievement in their efforts to rebuild this island nation after the destructive earthquake in 2010. But the garment factory has under-delivered on projected jobs. Haitian workers have accused managers of bullying and sexual harassment. And an ABC News investigation has found that after opening its factory in the Haitian industrial park, built with $400 million of global aid, The Clinton firm became a Clinton Foundation donor, and its owner invested in a startup company owned by Hillary Clinton's former chief of staff. This was building back better, in the words of Bill Clinton, said Jake Johnson, an analyst with the Center for Economic and Policy Research, which is a left-wing, left-of-center policy research firm, not a right-wing one. This is a left-wing one. Haiti was going to stand on its own 2 feet. Certainly, by that standard, it's been a complete failure. It's 6 years later, it's pretty clear that hasn't happened. But the post-quake projects nurtured along with $10 billion in international relief and hefty support for the U.S. government and Clinton Foundation have, at best, had mixed results. Wow, that's weird. Contributors to the Clinton Foundation benefited from the relief effort in Haiti writ large. The evidence indicates that those who were contributing to the Clinton Foundation and active in Haiti were certainly a part of the reconstruction process. With hundreds living in tents, a luxury hotel. In elite circles in Haiti, the Clintons are held in high regard. I mean, like, look at this shit. This is the Clinton Foundation. Let me see if minimum wage comes in here. Okay, this article doesn't have the minimum wage. What about this one? Did Hillary Clinton at the State Department working with U.S. corporations pressure Haiti not to raise the minimum wage to 61 cents an hour from 24 cents? The answer is yes. They say half true, but the answer is yes. Sort of. Memos from 2008 and 2009 obtained by WikiLeaks strongly suggest, but don't prove without a doubt. Guys, they didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, guys. The memos say it, but hey, the State Department helped block the proposed minimum wage increase. The memos show that U.S. embassy officials in Haiti clearly opposed the wage hike and met multiple times with factory owners who directly lobbied against it to the Haitian president. Wow, thanks! It's almost like the capitalist bourgeoisie are internationally united! Oh, my Lord in heaven! It's almost like the Democrats are evil spawns of Satan! These are the people, by the way, who run Pod Save America. These are the people that Hasan is trying to talk to. They are evil. One of the worst parts about being me is I know these facts, and I know that very few other people do. So when I have conversation with them about people like Hillary Clinton or whatever, they're going to say some dumbass fucking shit that's not based in reality, and I have to slowly take the conversation and pretend I respect them all the way to a point where we can start talking about facts. It's very, very frustrating. It gets very tiring.
Why is it that, okay, so Republicans say they sort of lay all these problems at the feet of
By the way,
undocumented.
I am glad that Hasan did this. I am glad that Hasan did this. I'm 100% behind Hasan doing this. I think he did a great job so far. I think he's awesome. I hope he builds bridges. That all sounds awesome. I'm just saying, you need to understand who the other people are. Right? Like, these are not just like confused libs, okay? These are pure evil people. The confused libs are in the chats. The confused libs are in the audience. These people are not confused. These people are mammon. These are demons. Okay? These are bad people.
They say they're responsible for crime.
Yeah.
No, they're not. But there are obviously undocumented people. They're people, and some are committing terrible crimes, which they then exploit. But for the most part, these are people that not only are committing crimes at a low rate, but actually are unable to go to the police when they're victims of crime. Whether that's a domestic violence, they can't go to the police, or whether that's just sort of the quotidian mayhem of living in America, or a boss taking advantage of you. They can't go to the police, right?
Yeah.
Then they say, oh, well, they don't pay taxes. Actually, that's not true. They pay into Medicare, they pay into Social Security, and they don't get the benefits of it back. And then they say, well, they're driving up the cost of housing. I do not believe that undocumented people are the reason a house costs $450,000 where it used to cost $350,000.
Yeah, I didn't realize they were executives at BlackRock. The Guatemalan migrants are mass purchasing houses and making sure that everyone's a permanent renter. That's the point, though. It's not a trans person that's your landlord. It's not an undocumented immigrant that's your landlord that's raising the cost of rent. It's not, your manager is not an undocumented immigrant.
There are two big problems, though. One is...
there is one thing they're not addressing that I want to bring back to reality conversation here for a second. And the reality conversation is very, very straightforward and simple, guys. When an immigrant moves into a city, within that city, there is a certain number of affordable housing units, workforce housing units. And every worker that you bring into the city is going to be occupying those workforce housing units. And if those workforce housing units are all occupied, then workers start bidding up against each other and rent is going to rise, right? Because you need housing. Housing is a basic human need. You can't get a substitute for housing, right? There's different types of housing you could substitute, but you need housing. When supply is constrained and more demand comes in, there's going to be a bidding up. And that's why we see more and more people getting rent burdened, because there's more people are willing to bid more and more of their income to try to get one of those pieces of essential fucking elements of life. You will pay virtually any amount of money not to be homeless, and you will pay literally any amount of money to not die. Exactly.
There are a lot of people saying this, and it doesn't break through because there is this right-wing media system that puts out this one story. And the second problem is, like, Democrats really don't have trust on this issue with the people that they're trying to persuade.
Right. But the other thing is, and this is very important, and I think both Hasan and him are not understanding, there is visible poverty. All right? If 1 million immigrants come into your city, but there were 1 million empty apartments that they now rent, you're going to have a different feeling than 1 million immigrants coming to your city and living out on the fucking streets. All right? Do you understand the difference?
See it our way, which I think goes to the point you made before, right? Which is, why is it that Donald Trump can meander around the country rambling, committing what in any other era would be, if not like campaign ending, like campaign harming, ridiculous statements, gaffes, sure, that he can basically be in like a strategic mess, but Kamala Harris has to hit every point exactly right. If she says the wrong thing on The View, or there's a bad interview from 2020, those things can be campaign ending. And I think, to your point, it goes to something deeper, a kind of a lack of a like kind of, I don't know, core vision or motivating mission for the current Democratic Party.
Yeah, something that is an understandable, easy to communicate, simple policy that you can put your campaign around. So we agree on the messaging front a little bit, at least, or the asymmetry of how much right-wing media dominates the ecosystem, the media ecosystem in general, all the way from independent outlets down to traditional media, where, as far as I understand it, 73% now, I think, of all news watchers are watching Fox News. 73%. That's an insane percentage. That's an insane number, right? So outside of that, though, I think here is the disagreement that we will have. That while Joe Biden did a bunch of stuff that I agree was positive, it was simply not enough. And that was something that I was always very critical on as well. If you see a homeless person and you chuck them 2 pennies, and they're sitting on the corner of the street, like, yeah, technically their material wealth improved by a percentage, a decent percentage, but he's still going to be mad at you because you just gave him 2 pennies. Why doesn't the homeless person understand that their situation is much better? That is not an effective way to communicate to Americans that, like, no, you don't understand. Inflation is actually under control, that the economy is rebounding, even if it's objective truth, because they, like, most Americans don't understand what inflation is, and they don't understand that prices are not going to go down in that circumstance. And besides that, and I factor this is not just the vibe session communications, but I'm also talking about specifically, like, even the IRA or many of these other like parts of the legislative agenda that Biden put forth that was more progressive than I expected, more progressive than even the Obama administration in many respects. But one, they didn't do a good job of communicating any of those victories, in my opinion. They did not actually, like, go to the media regularly to show these victories and to showboat and gloat a little bit. Two, a lot of that was also held up in gridlock because we didn't whip votes well enough within within our own party. And I think
the other thing is, it's not just that they won't whip votes, is that there's no political operation to whip votes, right? And Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin were actually praised by Joe Biden. They were actually held up as great senators by Joe Biden.
That there was a lot of punishments that should have been dished out to the likes of Joe Manchin and the likes of Kyrsten Sinema, rather than offering a Green senator an opportunity to be a prominent fixture of the Democratic Party. I think that a lot more punishments should have been issued towards these people that use the moment of the spotlight to specifically play the role of a rotating villain in the Democratic Party, which has happened time and time again, all the way from Joe Lieberman to the Maggie Hassans of the world, the Kyrsten Sinemas, the Joe Manchins of the world, and the problem solvers caucuses within Congress in general. These guys need to get whipped into shape.
Yeah, I wish I believed that. I just wish I believed that. But
think about it.
But I just I don't know how much more.
Okay, there's a lot of different what ifs, right? But what we do know is we tried the way of, I'm going to reach across the aisle for 2 years and let the Democrats get fucking owned by Republicans organizing against their programs for years. I'm going to let all the lobbyists go to busy work in Washington, D.C. I'm not going to pass shit for months and months and months. I'm not going to, if I were president of the United States, I would run on an issue, and then I'd run on these issues, and then if I got a trifecta, I'd come into office, and on day one, I would drop the package of legislation, and I would have my Speaker of the House, and I would have my Majority Leader of the Senate sitting with me in fucking Oval Office with whip counts on every single thing, and I'd say, we're voting tomorrow. And all these senators and all the Congress people would go, oh, boo-hoo, I didn't even get to read the bill, boo-hoo. And I'd be like, you vote for this shit or I'm primarying you. I am primarying you. If you don't vote for this right fucking now, I am starting a primary of you and I'm donating $1 million fucking dollars against you. Day one. This is how you do it. That's what LBJ would do, except LBJ would have his dick out the entire time, okay? I'm sorry the mic exploded. It's not my normal mic that's set up for me to yell.
Or you could have gotten out of Joe Manchin or Kyrsten Sinema.
Joe Manchin said he was comfortable with spending $3.5 trillion at the very beginning of the negotiations. You guys know that, right? Manchin signals he'll be a team player on spending deals. Senator Joe Manchin, a critical centrist vote of Democratic caucus, is signaling colleagues he won't derail a $3.5 trillion budget resolution that contains many of President Biden's legislative priorities. But he changed his tune because they dicked around for another fucking 2 months after this. And he ended up blocking a bunch of shit. If you just stuff it down their throats too fast for them to react, and you make big threats, the freshly elected president is very scary. Senator Joe Manchin calls for up to $4 trillion in infrastructure spending as Democrats are poised to control Congress. Yep. Oh, you had to find this on Archive? The most important thing, do infrastructure. Spend 2, 3, 4 trillion over a 10-year period on infrastructure. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and those jobs aren't coming back. They need a place to work.
Whole time, like I'll walk away. And Joe Biden kept him in the tent. That got judges through. That got the Inflation Reduction Act through. I do not believe
Inflation Reduction Act.
I think we agree on a lot. I just don't believe that there is a version of the Joe Biden presidency that could have been more successful on legislative policy. I don't see that.
There's something called the first 100 days, which is something that FDR kind of pioneered. And I'll show you. Wikipedia is good for this. First 100 days. This is what an encyclopedia is for. Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed 77 laws during his first 100 days. 15 major bills. The Emergency Banking Act, the Colin Harrison Act, the Economy Act, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Federal Emergency Relief Act, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the Emergency Farm Mortgage Act, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is still operating today, Securities Act, the Homeowners Refinancing Act, the Glass-Steagall Act, the Farm Credit Act, the Emergency Railroad Transportation Act, and the National Industrial Recovery Act. The first 100 days. This would be insane. It spent a stunning $500 million on soup kitchens, blankets, employment schemes, and nursery schools. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration was shut down in 1935, and its work taken over by two new agencies, the Work Progress Administration, the Social Security Administration. FERA was involved with a broad range of projects, including construction, projects for professionals, writers, actors, musicians, and artists, and the production of consumer goods. They focused on giving food to the poor, educating workers, and providing 500,000 jobs for women. Again, they did so many things. It's almost impossible to explain how much shit he did.
I can appreciate what I'm about to say then.
Hit me.
Use the IRS and also the SEC and maybe even the FTC to investigate as to why Joe Manchin's brother owns a coal mine and whether there's a conflict of interest there. Investigate why Joe Manchin's daughter is selling pharmaceutical products to the state of West Virginia when Joe Manchin is directly at odds with any sort of bill that passes that would lower the cost of pharmaceuticals.
So you want the president
Yes.
to politicize these agencies
Yes.
and use them to go after people?
Because you want to know why?
Tell me why. Hey, tell me why.
Because they're doing it at the behest of not only the American people, their interests, but they're also, and this is probably going to frustrate everyone in this audience, but here's the thing that I get very frustrated about.
Wide range of listeners across a broad ideological spectrum.
Here's what really frustrates me.
What frustrates
about
you?
The way the Democratic Party operates. They love norms. They love institutions. They love civility. They care about bipartisanship for the sake of bipartisanship, as though that is something that
some do, some don't.
Yeah, sure. But for the most part, the broad communication coming out of the Democratic Party is that these are the things that they care about. These are the top line issues. We got to protect democracy. We got to preserve our institutions. The problem is the other side doesn't give a shit about that. So I think I want a Democratic Party that fights for me and others who are marginalized.
First of all, if the institutions do not deliver positive outcomes for you and your family, why the fuck would you care about them? We are in a country of a revolutionary. We're a revolutionary country. The United States of America was founded on people saying, fuck the institutions. Fuck traditions. We're going to make up new shit. Why the fuck are we defending institutions if those institutions are not fixing our problems? This is a country of revolution.
Other people that like desperately need help. And I know that the Republican Party is never going to do that. I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, well, at least the Republicans are kind of listening to what I have to say or are, communicating, channeling the anger that I feel. Like, I don't care. They're charlatans. They're significantly worse than the Democratic Party. I don't like the Democratic Party for their closeness to the Republican Party. I want them to be a party that actually fights for the working class, for all Americans unconditionally, regardless of ideology. And you can't do that through bipartisanship with an otherwise like hostile entity that is the Republican Party. And I think there is a lot of hypocrisy there, and and hypocrisy that people can see. Hypocrisy is the easiest thing that they can understand. You can't say that these guys are fascists, these guys are racist for 8 years for wanting to build a wall and then turn around and straight up tell Anderson Cooper in that town hall, well, maybe the wall is a good idea and I want to build it myself. I'm going to be the border czar. I'm going to be the border party. You can't do that. Americans look at that and go, so you're admitting that you were just lying for the past 8 years.
Well, it's like, again...
Except... Again, okay, so is he going to actually address the fucking debate? Or is he going to just go immediately to vibes? I can't wait to hear this.
No, it's like, I think actually, like you look at somebody like Dan Osborne, right, who ran so far ahead of the Democratic Party, ran as this economic populist, but one of the things he had to do to get there was kind of be tough on immigration. And actually, like, I think part of it goes back to, like, if people felt like they knew, like, in their bones, like
do these people think that every single candidate has to run with the exact same platform on every single thing? Because, like, Dan Osborne running in Nebraska, that's a complete flyer. That's a complete deep red state. If he has to say, I want to have a more restrictive border, who gives a shit? We're talking about the Democratic Party running a national campaign which has with billions of dollars to set a message. And we could see that the American people's position on immigration shifted when Joe Biden shifted his position from pro-immigration to anti-immigration. He was the one who led the way in the dramatic flip. It was Democrats changing their mind on immigration that led to the big move in the polls, not Republicans.
Bernie Sanders being, to me, like the signal example. Like, you know what Bernie's about. You know what he's for. You know what motivates him. You know what he cares about. Same thing for Trump. You know when there are issues he doesn't give a fuck about, and there's issues he really, really cares about. Immigration is one. Trade, right? Like, you know, the things that that have been anti-crime, whatever. That there are things that have been in Donald Trump's like kind of brain slowly losing plasticity that are like kind of solid in there. And for Bernie, you know, like we know why he's in politics, and that gives a politician the space to kind of challenge orthodoxies in the party or kind of run counter to it to signal to the people you need to signal to. Now, like, you know, you say, oh, you can't call them fascist and then also work with them. Like, yeah, but at the same time, it's like I just don't know what to do with this nuance. Joe Biden, like, I am glad Joe Biden did the Inflation Reduction Act and an infrastructure bill and a gun bill and the CHIPS Act and a bunch of other stuff. I'm glad he was able to do all of those things. I'm glad that he was able to use his kind of like moderate brand, whatever, to kind of bring people in and get some stuff done. Like, I don't think the country is better off if he didn't do those things. So, like, you describe it as hypocrisy. Like, it's compromise. Like, politics requires
okay, first of all, a couple things here. Politics does not require compromise. That's the liberal mind of, that's just a platitude. That is West Wing bullshit. Politics is about power. Politics is about power. How did the American revolutionaries compromise with the British crown? How did Hitler compromise with the Jews? What the fuck are you talking about? It's about drawing together a coalition that is strong enough to impose its will. I happen to believe in a liberatory fucking coalition of goodness. The fascists support evil shit. We need to beat them. Now, Joe Manchin doesn't have his position because he believes in it. Joe Manchin is a whore for corporate cash, triangulating around, and he is subject to pressure. Now, you could say, I don't want to enact pressure on Joe Manchin because you don't want to confront the power that supports him. This is just nonsensical bullshit. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Politics does not require anything. Like, you're just saying words.
compromise.
The Republican Party rarely ever compromises. They're uncompromising. You only have to beat them.
But that's not true, though, right? Like, I agree with that on Trump, but that's just not true. Like, they did compromise, right? There are plenty of people on the Republican side that were furious at Republican senators for going along with some of these Biden bills, right? Like, those are people that did compromise.
Yeah,
except that their votes were immaterial and didn't matter. And the bills were so compromised that they were so far to the right that they were basically giving them everything they wanted. Like, what are you talking about?
There's a million examples, however, of Republicans that are obstructionists that I'm sure you also love presenting, that go back to their town halls and lie about all the money that they brought back home from the bills that they voted against. So ultimately, we now know that political polarization is set in a way that never really existed in American history until the last couple of decades, right? I think that parties originally were more geopolitically focused on their immediate needs, like statewide needs. So you saw this dramatic shift, and now the Republican Party, especially with Mitch McConnell under the Obama administration, showcased that like permanent obstructionism is not punishable. And that gridlock is always considered the administrative party's problem. If there's any sort of gridlock, it's the fault of the leadership. And Americans hate gridlock. Yeah, that's kind of the reason why I was talking about Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, because there was a massive moment where like they actually ended up protecting the Republican Party because they were never going to vote for these bills anyway. And now the entire conversation was about like madness within the Democratic Party's caucuses, like, oh, they can't get their ducks in a row, right? Like that was genuinely frustrating to me, because it's like, if you would whip your votes immediately, then you could showcase that the Republican Party is standing in the way of progress. But that's just like, that is legislative minutia. What is more important to talk about is broad, sweeping legislative changes or a agenda that might even come across as bold and radical in the interest of the American working class. Joe Biden said he wanted to do the public option. Everybody knew that wasn't real. He never talked about it after. He used the public option. He slotted that in the primaries when the party was primed to the Bernie left, and everyone was like, trying to communicate their own populist version of what Bernie was doing. And Joe Biden won the primaries and effectively tabled the discussion about healthcare. This is still a major problem, regardless. Yes.
Yeah, and you helped him do that. You helped him do that. And I, by the way, called that. I said, this is the same shit back in 2019 when I was debating these fucking points with dumbass centrists. I said, this is a lie. They're not going to do a public option. Barack Obama ran a public option. They didn't do it. They're not serious. They're not credible. If you believe in healthcare reform, you gotta support Bernie Sanders or you're not gonna get any. And that was proven to be correct. Unfortunately, that was correct. And why was that correct? Well, the reason why that was correct is because I actually understand healthcare policy. And here's the reality about the public option. If you're one of these liberals and you're like, Mike, why do you lefty radicals support Medicare for all when a public option would solve all the problems and would be easier to pass because it wouldn't result in people losing their health insurance? Because, idiot, I actually understand what healthcare policy is. If you have a public option, I'm going to explain it to you. If you have a public option, there are two types of public options that you can have: a weak public option or a poor or a strong public option. If you have a weak public option, that means that its benefits are worse than the publicly available insurance bills or insurance policies that are in exchange. So nobody will buy it. So in that case, the public option will have literally no one enrolled in it because it doesn't provide benefits that are actually worth the money. If you have so that's the weak public option. If you have a strong public option, that means that it provides benefits that are on par or better than publicly available for-profit insurance companies, which is the much more likely outcome. Then what's going to happen is adverse selection, right? Insurance companies are going to want to remove sick individuals from their risk pools so that they can cherry pick healthy insurance customers, and it'll become a dumping ground, which means all the sick individuals, insurance companies are going to try to slide those on. And so it's going to cost way more than expected. And because that strong public option does not have the premiums coming in from healthy individuals who are not actually taking advantage of the health insurance policy, it's going to get more and more and more in the red. And so it's going to require bailouts from the government because it will not be able to support itself, or else the premiums are going to skyrocket and it's going to be a lot more expensive. So you have created a problem where either the government will have to react by claiming those healthy patients back from the private insurance companies and bring them into the public option itself, thereby making it Medicare for all, or else the system is going to continually start to fail and creak, and it's going to be way more expensive because it doesn't have the premiums from the healthy individuals inside the risk pool. Thus, the public option is in crisis. And if the public option can claim the healthy individuals, well, then it's going to start destroying the private health insurance market because those things require profit, and they're not going to be able to compete like for like with the public system because it's going to have a lot less overhead and profit. It's like that's the way Medicare is. Medicare has a lot less overhead than a private insurance plan. And so with that situation, the private insurance companies are going to face an existential threat, and they're going to try to destroy the public option anyway. You cannot. The public option is a stupid fucking idea.
negotiating pharmaceutical prices and ensuring that insulin prices are capped at $35, which is now going to be looking like a Trump victory when he's in office. It doesn't matter. It's still good for the American people. So that's great. But like that is good, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
And I think that when you don't do that, when you have this very technocratic, third-way neoliberal approach, but you sprinkle in a little bit of like anti-corporate, anti-billionaire populism that Joe Biden certainly did, it's not, you're a rudderless ship. You're not communicating effectively like what you are about. And when you don't have,
which they aren't about anything. They're not about anything, which is their entire problem. When you looked at the Democratic Party officials or the consultants that worked with Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, they said they wanted to create the impression she was different. Create the impression that she was different, not be different. Not actually believe in anything.
A North Star that every single person.
Your theory of the public option being undermined by corporations is directly observable in reality analogous situations where for-profit businesses usurp and destroy public institutions like schools, postal services, the military, NASA, etc. The chatters in here doubting you are beyond stupid. It's what happens every time. Because the government
can point to and say, this is what the party is about. Your enemies can portray you as whatever they want. And that's why the anti-trans ads are even remotely effective, because you can make the Democratic Party look clownish and inconsistent and even silly and hyper-focused on whatever key issues there are, because one, they rarely ever focus on universality in programs. Everything has to be means tested, which I think is both on the policy front and on the politics front, garbage. Focus on universal programs, because that way you can cut across every single group and you can disproportionately target marginalized populations, black populations, brown populations, and trans people. These people do not exist in a vacuum. They're not magical, mystical beings that are not experiencing the shocks of the market, or they still have to pay rent. They still need workplace protections. They still need, they still need the cost of medicine to go down, right? So universal programs capture the attention of all Americans, including this majority white, angry population that is finding themselves in the throes of the Republican reactionary movement. And so they need to do that. And if they don't do that, then the subtle populism of the right is always going to be the only game in town, and they're going to be able to present themselves as anti-establishment while they have billionaires parading around all the campaign stops, like Elon Musk trying to do that X logo every time he jumps, like a child.
God,
I hate Elon Musk.
That is the trick, though, man. They're like, it does speak to just how far, one place where, so if you listen to the Harris campaign's advisors talking to Dan Pfeiffer, I know you did, and you had your problems with it. But one place where they agreed is that, hey, everyone's saying, this trans ad, it actually might not have been their most effective ad. And they were trying to, and what Quentin Fulk said was that, they were actually really trying to target it to get at black men. And it looks like maybe that didn't work, right? That's what that sort of, we'll see, we're going to get more data, but the point that the ad makes is just that Democrats are weird, Democrats are strange, right? And they use trans people as a cudgel to do that. But to the larger point, you have billionaires, just literally the wealthiest man in the world.
The top seven donors this election cycle all donated to the Republican Party. And they were donating $100 million, $200 million. It was crazy.
How do you think about the fact that in right-wing media right now, and right-wing adjacent media, they are managing to be both the party of the wealthiest sort of oligarchs in the world and the kind of traditional moral set trying to impose a specific way of living on people, and anti-establishment, kind of rebellious politics?
It's Nazi Germany, straight up. It's just pure fascism. That's all this is. It worked. It worked 100 years ago, and it's seemingly working right now. And it's not just the United States of America. It's all across Western Europe. The only country that bucked the trend of the incumbency disadvantage, seemingly, was Mexico. One must ask the question why an old doddering man.
Well, they don't want to talk about
who was.
Don't talk about Mexico. Don't talk about Mexico. They don't like Mexico. Don't talk about Mexico. By the way, huge W for Hasan. By the way, fucking hell yeah, man.
Still, relatively telegenic, even though he believed in wood elves, duendes, was able to get a tremendous amount of popularity and then become the transition candidate that actually passed the torch to a younger woman, Claudia Sheinbaum. I'm, of course, talking about Mexico. I'm talking about AMLO is the old man. Claudia Sheinbaum was his spiritual and ideological successor in the Morena party. Why did that happen? Why was AMLO so popular? And why is Claudia Sheinbaum also incredibly popular? Why did Claudia Sheinbaum win the election with even larger margins of victory than AMLO did? It's because they expanded the welfare state, they increased minimum wage, and they made a whole bunch of decisions that genuinely improved the material conditions of a lot of people in Mexico. And that's something that people will never forget. We talked about the black vote for a second. As far as voter patterns goes, older black populations, like older black voters as a voting bloc, is a more reliable voting bloc for the Democratic Party than younger black voters are. One must ask the question, why? That is because people remember the last time the Democratic Party did something for black people, did something bold, expended social and political capital for black people. And that is something that people do not forget. If you give people things, they will not forget that. That's why there was a lot of dummies who thought, oh, Trump's back, we're going to get some stimmy checks. It's not going to happen, but they still remember that because they think, oh, yeah, Trump gave us stimmy checks. I mean,
well, Joe Biden expanded. I mean, I
know.
And by the way, I'm not pushing back on any of this because I don't agree with the sentiment. I am trying in the weeks after this election to just question these sort of statements, because then it's like, well, Joe Biden expanded the child tax credit, made a huge difference for millions of children.
No, absolutely. The expansion of the child tax credit was fantastic, but it didn't continue. It was so successful and it didn't continue. Do you think American people know why that happened?
I don't.
Who's at fault if American people don't know why that happened?
I think some of it is Democrats, some of it is the mainstream media, some of it is the right-wing media, and some of it, by the way, is the left. It is the media of the left, right? The first couple years, there's been so many moments where, by great frustration, I think in the way politics is talked about is often people do not want to do the work of figuring out who's actually responsible, right? Like, Republicans will shut down the government, and mainstream sources will say Washington gridlock continues, right? Or Joe Biden will be stymied in some way, or Barack Obama will be stymied. Why didn't Barack Obama do this? Why didn't Barack Obama do that when he had a majority, right? He said, well, because it's actually, you know what? In the Senate, having 49 votes to get rid of the filibuster and having 50 votes to get rid of the filibuster is a difference between doing a ton of shit and not being able to do anything. That's not the fault of 49 people. That's the result of one person. Yeah.
Can I bring in something really quick? This conversation that you and I are having, have you ever heard a Republican have this conversation?
Well, what do you mean? Like Republicans don't talk this way?
Have you ever heard a Republican go, sorry, we couldn't get this done because we simply did not have the votes? Is that ever like a real significant front-facing public conversation that the Republicans have?
I mean, I feel like you want the answer to be no, but I do think the answer is yes.
I can't recall a time. Maybe no. I'm asking you.
No, I think on their side, I think they have over the last decade slowly but surely gotten rid of the people who are pointing out the actual things that stand in their way,
Yeah,
right? They went
whip
after
their
Kevin
votes better.
McCarthy. They went out. Well, yeah, and sometimes that works. Sometimes that leaves them pretty well stuck. I mean, Donald Trump was president for 4 years. He wanted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. He didn't have the votes, right? There was a big conversation about why he didn't have the votes. That there have been the Republican base furious with spending bills that were passed, right?
What did Donald Trump do after when John McCain struck down the Affordable Care Act?
What did he do?
He took out the individual mandate regardless. He did.
Well, he did what the same thing a Democratic president would do. Do as much as you can legislatively, and when it fails, use your executive power, which is what Biden has done on student loans and a bunch of other issues.
Yeah. So my point is, he still got the most significant aspect of his, agenda across, and in the process, he utilized the bully pulpit to laser John McCain nonstop and effectively bully John McCain in a way that I've never seen a Democratic president turn around and communicate about Joe Biden. I'll hear it about the left, about how they're naysayers, how they're spoilers. I never hear it about conservative Democrats. And I think it's the coalition.
We talk about that.
It's the coalition that you want to have, is my point. And I think Democrats, win or lose, want to win by their own established policy.
Okay, so here's the reality. Here's the tension that I think Hasan is really getting into. That's very important. I'm going to save yourself, don't rewind. I'm going to go back. I had to pee.
What did Donald Trump do?
Votes that there have been the Republican base furious with spending bills that were passed, right?
What did Donald Trump do after when John McCain struck down the Affordable Care Act?
What did he do?
He took out the individual mandate regardless. He did.
Well, he did what the same thing a Democratic president would do. Do as much as you can legislatively, and when it fails, use your executive power, which is what Biden has done on student loans and a bunch of other issues.
Yeah.
No,
so
he didn't,
my
though.
point is,
No, he didn't, though.
he still got the most significant.
First of all, on student loans, Joe Biden tried to use some backdoor COVID authority instead of the authority that's directly in the Department of Education's authorizing legislation that gives it complete authority to change student loans. And he also did minimal changes. He did tinkering around the edges. For example, Joe Biden could just direct that the interest rate be set at 0% and retroactively forgive all interest. Now, you would still own the principal. It wouldn't be forgiving the debt, but it would be modifying the debt, which is directly in the fucking legislation, and it would make it so that people didn't get trapped in these these interest spirals with their debt. Joe Biden could have gone for all sorts of fucking things he could have done. There's a million things he could have done. A million things he could have done. He could have removed student loan debt from credit reports. He could have done a million fucking things that he did not do because he doesn't believe in the policy of forgiving student debt because he believes that people should have to pay interest. He likes that. He likes to keep education gate-kept by wealth.
Aspect of his agenda across, and in the process, he utilized the bully pulpit to laser John McCain nonstop and effectively bully John McCain in a way that I've never seen a Democratic president turn around and communicate about Joe Biden. I'll hear it about the left, about how they're naysayers, how they're spoilers. I never hear it about conservative Democrats. And I think it's the coalition.
We talk about that.
It's the coalition that you want to have, is my point. And I think Democrats, win or lose, want to win by their own established policies and the way that they want to win, and they're willing to lose if necessary, as long as they still maintain the overarching attitude that they have.
I just think that is,
or maybe they're just bad and wrong.
Well, I just think that I think people need to be persuaded. Like David Plouffe talking to Pfeiffer yesterday. He's like, look, you go to a swing state, you got a certain percentage of liberals and progressives, you got a certain percentage of conservatives, and you got this vast swath of moderates. You need them. Now, I think where you're right is there is something about a Democratic establishment figures that feel more comfortable with a Liz Cheney sitting at the table than with a leftist sitting at the table.
It's gross.
And that the disagreements with Liz Cheney are more kind of are acceptable, and the disagreements to the left are less acceptable.
But one must ask the question, why is that acceptable? Liz Cheney is anti-LGBT. Liz Cheney is anti-abortion. Liz Cheney is anti-Democratic Party. Liz Cheney is the daughter of a rabid, warmongering, terrorist sociopath, Dick Cheney. And yet there are Democrats who are more comfortable with her than people who also would totally be on board with the Democratic Party, but I don't know, have maybe sometimes identical opinions of Liz Cheney on even LGBT issues. Like Joe Rogan is a great example of this.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party has consistently utilized and weaponized in the most cynical ways possible identity politics.
Oh my God, Hasan, this is such a banger episode. So, like, honestly, I want to say this. People talk about Hasan and they call him a himbo and they say he's dumb and they say he's not good at debates and stuff. That's like basically one of the main arguments that people like Destiny try to make against Hasan. And the reality is he's actually very well spoken. He's intelligent. He's actually very good at debates. The thing about Hasan is when you're also as attractive as he is, and trust me, it pisses me off as much as it pisses you off. People that are not as hot as him or not as tall as him, they think that life is like a role-playing game where you have certain points that you could put in your different slots, you know, like Hasan has an 18 in charisma, and so that means that he has to have an 8 in intellect. You know what I mean? Like, they think of life. That's not how life works. Unfortunately for you, Destiny, he can be 6'4". He can be model hot, and he's also more intelligent than you. All right? I'm sorry, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, okay? And I would say that this is a pretty good example of that. Now, it is what it is. Now, that's how you glaze. That's how you dick ride. But the one thing about Hasan is he has the emotional intelligence to downplay his intellect, exactly what you're saying, Demi Charm, which is he understands that if he comes out there as a big dude, as an attractive dude, and also tries to act arrogant, people are going to dislike that, you know? So coming out and being humble, coming out and saying, hey, you know, I'm not perfect, you know, and like listening and respecting others is actually a good strategy. But I just want to point this out because when he's nailing these points, and like, this is probably one of the most important points. Cynical uses of identity politics were one of the main ways that Bernie Sanders was attacked. That's true.
And I say this as someone who is infinitely more progressive than the average Democrat on these issues. Mm-hmm. They just use it. They use it against Bernie. They use it against every single person. And now they're dropping it themselves. That makes every Democrat look like a silly fool. That makes it does. In the eyes of Americans, they go, you called us racist, you called us transphobic, you called us crazy, and now you're saying, okay, my bad, we got to drop this woke shit. Like, of course people are going to go, all right, I guess like I'm primed into now believing the Republicans. Like, you're pushing your base towards being more open-minded to right-wing policies. It's the only thing you're doing. And that's how and that's the only thing you're doing when you don't actually claw back a lot of the things that the Republicans, the former Republican administration, engages in. Like, Democrats are very good at, you know, trying to fix the deficit. They're the only real deficit hawks, right? Republicans certainly don't care. They only use it as a weapon to wield to communicate against the Democratic agenda. But outside of that, like on foreign policy, Joe Biden said he was going to be an effective foreign policy leader. He did NATO. He kept talking about, you know, NATO Jack, AUKUS, as though that was going to be.
He loved talking about AUKUS. Like, I've never been more. Well,
it's because, by the way, the reason why Biden was talking about AUKUS is because that's actually what our American state is doing. Like, Joe Biden, you think he's talking about AUKUS because his brain is rotting, but the reality is it's because his brain is working just well enough. Right? Like, the American state doesn't give a shit about you or me or any American living a good, dignified life. It doesn't give a shit about our material conditions or our housing quality or our air quality or the quality of the food or the safety of the products we use or anything. It only cares about domination of China. is trying to ring fence in China. And the United States knows it can't stand toe-to-toe with China and win. Okay? The United States knows it cannot stand toe-to-toe with China and win. So what's the strategy? The strategy is the same strategy that the imperialists used during the century of humiliation. Get every single world powered in an alliance against China. So it isn't China against the United States, it's China against the world. That is what AUKUS represents. It is the United States' pivot to Asia is, let's get an alliance with South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, India, Pakistan. We will all ally. That's the strategy the United States wants to counter China. It can't counter China on its own. But if it does that and it brings in the European Union and all of those, they get a ring of fire around China, they'll be able to contain communism. That's what they care about. They don't care about anything else, okay? Your life, what's good for you, your family, you are just you are a serf for them to drain resources from. You are cannon fodder to be sent to die. They don't give a shit about your life or you.
Like nervous in politics, like other than the day before an election, than when Joe Biden was still in the race and he did that conference and he talked about AUKUS. It's like, no one knows what the fuck AUKUS is.
Yeah. Okay. That's a deep cut.
That is a deep cut.
But like Joe Biden was like, I'm the, adult in the room, Jack. I'm going to bring back America into the global stage. The way that the American public sees that is like, there's a war in Ukraine, right? And that's not even Joe Biden's fault. Like, I understand that.
I know you're not allowed to say that the Ukrainian war is America's fault, but I mean, did you guys see this?
Ranks on the Eastern Front line in part. Now, Ukraine is struggling to fill its ranks on the Eastern Front line in part because of a sharp increase in the number of desertions, more than 30,000 this year alone. This has prompted the government to decriminalise the offence for first-time offenders, allowing them to avoid a jail term if they return to duty. DW's Nimisha Jaswal reports.
Guys, lower the draft age to 18 while 30,000 deserters are leaving the front line. I'm sure the war is going great. We just need to give them another $100 billion. Now, I'm going to be the person. You can call me a Putinite if you want. I hate Vladimir Putin. He's an oligarchic capitalist. He's exactly who the CIA wanted in charge of Russia. Vladimir Putin is blowback, in case you don't know. Vladimir Putin, that's called blowback. We did shock therapy on Russia. We put in Yeltsin, and Yeltsin handed power to Putin. That is blowback, 100,000 quadrillion %. So if you want to be mad at me for telling you that, you're a fucking bitch. And Joe Biden fought tooth and nail against a neutral Ukraine. Why do we care about you? Why do we want Ukraine in NATO? Could someone explain to me why you want Ukraine in NATO? There is no American national security imperative. They're not part of the European Union. Like, what is the national security imperative there? The national security imperative is we want to contain Russia. It's a domination move, not a national security move. It is an imperialist move.
That's Vladimir Putin decided, I'm going to do the insane thing. I'm going to invade Ukraine. That's psychotic.
By the way, I'm not justifying the invasion of Ukraine. The invasion of Ukraine is a war crime, illegal, aggressive war, violates the UN Charter. It would be a lot easier for us to go after Russia if we hadn't violated the UN Charter and invaded Iraq illegally. It would be a lot easier for the United States to have a position of authority and a position, a moral leg to stand on if we hadn't already killed 1 million people in Iraq.
Right? But the way that people see it, they're like, why are we giving money to Ukraine when we're not fixing the potholes? Why are we giving money to Ukraine when the ISPs suck here? What the hell's going on? Why are we giving money to Ukraine where we don't have health care? We have homeless people everywhere. And then on top of that, they see that instability as like something that is Joe Biden's fault. Fair or unfair, doesn't matter. They attribute it to Joe Biden. Same thing with Israel, Palestine. They look to what is going on and they're like,
Israel, Palestine mention, Pa John's panic, Pa John's panic.
Like, this is insane. Like, why Biden will come out and say, or used to come out and say, we're going to do a 2-state solution. Benjamin Netanyahu the next day would be like, fuck the 2-state. What do you mean? How about no state? Literally the next day. And And Biden kept trying to do this thing where he was like finger wagging, where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna give him a heart to heart,
Right.
real man to man." For a lot of Americans, they saw that as like, you're weak, you're old, you're weak,
Yeah.
you're feeble, and you're getting dog walked by an American ally in a very public and very embarrassing way. And there's a metric ton of violence that's happening on top of that. Like, he ironically destroyed the goodwill that a lot of people had coming into his administration with the with the last, I guess, like post Afghanistan withdrawal.
Yeah.
Everything was bad after that with respect to Joe Biden's foreign policy.
It also just like it's also tied to.
I still defend the Afghan withdrawal, by the way, and I think the Democrats also dropped the ball on that too, because they should have stood 10 toes down and said that was the right thing to do. We exhibited political courage. And for the record, Republicans tried to do the 13 of our best soldiers died in Afghanistan thing over and over again. The cynical thing that they tried to do.
Republicans are shameless. Democrats are less so. It's
No, they should be shameless.
I'm not. I'm describing what the issue is. Yeah, I mean, part of this though too, huge policy problem in how the Biden administration has responded to the war in Gaza, but on that issue, on a bunch of foreign policy issues, a bunch of domestic issues, some of the problem has been Joe Biden gave a State of the Union, which was good, and everyone's like, okay, that's what happened, right?
It wasn't good. I watched it. He looked bad. It wasn't catastrophic, but he looked bad. Hasan said they cut where he said 63 died under Trump. Yeah, of course.
But other than that, he has been such an ineffective communicator and it has gotten so much worse over the last year.
Yeah, because he's old as fuck.
I know. But like, we're in this moment where we're like kind of trying to like, what went wrong? What about this? What about that? People are so mad. Like the people are like, they're like the answers that Kamala's advisors gave were unsatisfying. Yeah, they are unsatisfying. But so much of this is just like there was a giant anti-incumbent fervor around the world. Joe Biden was completely unable to articulate a defense of his policies, right? Like the fact that there is inflation and people are mad about inflation is not a reason alone. That explains that can explain why we lost if you accept that we had no agency in competing against that argument. But like Joe Biden certainly had just could not communicate effectively.
I think
there's two parts of this. One, there is Joe Biden can't communicate. The second part is, and this is the more important part, the policies are really unpopular, and this is even the most important part that liberals will not agree with me. The people are not actually stupid. They know what's going on in Gaza is bad and wrong. Whether it's a genocide, whether it's extermination, whether it's persecution, whichever level of war crimes you want to label it. If you're uncomfortable with the word genocide, fine. Extermination is persecution, all right? An illegal occupation. The American people got horrendous vibes from that, and they want it to be over. And Joe Biden didn't end it. It's not about whether, Americans are the most awake pro-Palestinian protesters on an Ivy League campus that are hyper-educated and engaged. They still look at the world as a horrifying place that is getting worse. It doesn't have to be perfectly clear exactly who to blame. They still look at the world and they see it getting worse, and they see billions of American dollars flowing abroad to do horrifying violence. And then there are people in America who are engaged and who are directly affected, and they have run away from the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party refuses to be democratically responsive. We saw that in Michigan. And we have plenty of evidence that a lot more people would have been supportive of Kamala Harris had she come out against what's going on in Israel and called for an immediate ceasefire and conditions on weapons transfers. I mean, Obama won because he was the anti-Iraq war guy. Now, he wasn't actually in the Senate to vote against the Iraq war. Very important point. Had he been in the Senate at the time, he would have voted for it a million quadrillion times. But since he wasn't in the Senate, he could pretend, he could cosplay like he was a peace fucking candidate. Peace candidates win. War candidates lose.
See what happens when someone effectively bullies corporations, regardless of being a right-wing Republican, in the upcoming Trump administration. Things are going to get significantly worse for every single person, including the people that voted for Donald Trump. One of the funniest aspects of the tariffs conversation that's happening right now is that Donald Trump is going to implement broad tariffs on 45% of all trade that comes in and out of the United States of America. Mexico, Canada, and China comprise 45% of all trade. He wants to tariff every single one. Tariffs are obviously an entry fee that like the American corporations are going to be paying. None of the countries are going to be paying for these tariffs. It's a policy that's going to destroy drop shippers, which overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump, and the Trump merchandise industry. So that's pretty funny. But having said that, it's going to be devastating for the economy. Now, what do I think Trump will do in the process? He'll obviously use tariffs to basically get corporations and industries and sector leaders on board with his agenda. So when he says jump, they say how high, or I'm going to slap you with tariffs and it's going to actually punish you. It's going to hurt your bottom line. And I think that's part of the reason why they're going to do that. The other reason is it's a regressive tax. It's a broad sales tax on all consumers that disproportionately affects the working poor. And Republicans love that shit. But he also, at times, I think, will just, institute the Defense Production Act or something. Like, we'll see it. We kind of saw it in COVID as well when it was a necessity. But
here's the thing. Trump did an extremely expansionist COVID response. Whether you like it or not, he stopped student loans. He sent out checks to people. He did expansions, and Democrats worked with him to do that. That's true. But he signed it. He signed it. That's the reality.
Like, the American government is powerful. All governments are powerful, but the American government is especially powerful. It's the wealthiest nation on the planet. And the way that it runs is basically, it's like 50 companies in a trench coat. We are working at the behest of corporations. We feed them with our tax dollars that turn into subsidies for them. They utilize those subsidies to, I guess, lower production costs, but then they use that to increase their profit.
No, they don't. They don't lower production costs. They just use those subsidies to offset their tax obligations. They don't, come on. No.
Margins and engage in what used to be illegal pre-Ronald Reagan, stock buybacks and the like, market manipulation of all different sorts. And we're constantly deregulating the economy. And I think that it's not just about having like a populist message. It's about actually implementing said populist message and show who your real enemies are. Like, not be afraid to say, these people are fucking your life up. And if you are truly the pro-working class party, as the Democrats want to be, as they claim they were historically, right? And there were certainly times when they were, then you have to say these corporations and the wealthy that have given us money, as well as the Republican Party, and always have been hedging their bets, are the real reason why you're feeling this economic anxiety, the real reason why you feel hopeless, that you will never be able to own a home, that you'll never be able to retire. And the Republicans are always in defense of them. They will distract you with lies. They will say your fellow neighbors, your God-fearing Christian, Muslim, whatever, Jewish neighbors are your enemy, when in fact, we know what the problem is. So we're going to bring them to heel. This kind of messaging is terrifying, obviously, for many different reasons, and it will never happen within the Democratic Party.
Well,
but in the absence of that,
I don't think that's true. Why?
We'll see. No, I think you'll just get focus grouped messaging and means testing about the opportunity economy, which Kamala Harris presented at a time when people were, when wage growth had never actually caught up to the cost of living
and cost of housing.
Yeah,
which, by the way, is like, you need to be. But this is,
by the way, do you see what I see? These libs, they know the truth. They know the truth. The cost of housing, the cost of living far outpaced wage gains, especially at the bottom. You know, it's like, oh, the bottom wages went up the 10%, guys. It went from $12 to $13.50. Nobody could afford to live on $13.50. That's the bottom 10% of wages, and you're saying that as a flex?
Oh, you need to deflate housing. That's a that
You need to build vast amounts of housing.
Yeah.
The
Federal jobs program. Get these fucking incels to work.
well, we got to get these incels to work.
No, get them to work. Give them whether they like it or not, they're gonna get good, well paid, and they're gonna work. None of this neat stuff anymore. They can't be online all the time. They're too online.
It's your business. Now you're coming after your own business.
It's fine. I'm happy for
everybody's online now. Everybody's online now. Can we stop with the always online shit? Everybody's always online. Everybody's on their fucking phone. Just shut the fuck up with this. This is like this is the most cringe millennial thing that people do, which is like, you're always online.
I would drop everything if we got universal health care and a federal jobs program and we're building public housing all around the country. That's fine.
There's a place where the left, the online left and the online right meets, and it kind of meets a little bit at people who think RFK has some good ideas. a little bit. What do you think? What do you like? What is the appeal there?
Cranks.
Just cranks?
Yeah, anti-establishment cranks. There's a lot of them. There's the Tulsi Gabbard constituency, which is like marginal. It's not all that significant. But yeah, I think that the online left is not as robust a media ecosystem as like people think it is in general. And besides that, they don't have any sort of like political motion regardless, right? I am, I have disagreements with the closest Congress members that are ideologically as closely aligned with myself as possible, but I still have many disagreements with them. And outside of that, I think like these guys that like RFK Jr. because they think he's going to make America healthy again. They're just they just like the crank stuff.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
I mean, you talked to like when I'm really like 4 years, or I guess 8 years ago. Jesus. I remember after Trump won the first time, what I was feeling at the time, which I'm still feeling now, is that like the two challenges, right, is that like at a moment where someone like Trump is ascendant, is big left together, this big tent together from, yes, it includes the kind of pro-democracy, anti-Trump right, runs all the way to the far left and leftists. How do you keep that big group of people together? And I do think, like, you're right. Like, there is just, in part because there's just so much money behind it. Like, the online right is, I think, it's bigger and more influential. But it also knows how to get on board, right? Like, it knows, like, it fights, it has disagreements, it pushes, but then it knows, like, for our ends, for our goals, we all need to get behind, whether it's Trump or in previous elections, it was getting behind like Romney-like figures, McCain-like, like they get behind those figures. And sometimes it feels like on the left, there's no moment at which we say, all right, we've had the fight, we've had the debate, we disagree on a whole bunch of stuff. Hey, everybody, we're going to get together. We're going to make sure that we stop Donald Trump. We elect Joe Biden as much as we elect Kamala Harris. Like that moment doesn't come. And like, I'm not saying that Democrats in power aren't in part responsible for that. I think part of what we need to do is figure out a politics that brings people in. But it does like everyone is responsible.
Yeah, I think just as I was very critical of Bernie Sanders' campaign, despite, still loving Bernie, because he was nowhere near as aggressive as he could have been in the primaries and it,
like I'll give you an example. The emails. In fact, Hillary Clinton talks about this. She talks about this as one of the turning points of the 2016 primary was when Bernie Sanders said in a debate, "Nobody cares about your goddamn emails," or something like that. That was 100% the point where he lost the primary. That was when he lost the primary. He should have said, Hillary Clinton is facing criminal charges for mishandling classified documents, and this is a risk we cannot afford against Trump. We all know, listen, if you're a Democrat, you probably like Hillary Clinton, but the truth is she's unelectable. The American people don't trust her, and we can't. What if she gets criminally charged a week before the election? Which is what ended up happening. When he gave cover for her, when he ran away from attacking her personally, he saved her. He should have gone 100,000 degrees right at her heart.
Definitely should have probably gone on more like independent media route in a similar vein to Donald Trump. I am still, because I blame the fault on Bernie's campaign strategies in the primaries, despite recognizing the structural hurdles of like a left-wing populist coming out of a Democratic Party primary where it's like the laser-focused audience that goes out and votes at those things, or like the MSNBC watcher base that is like objectively terrified of someone like that because people are saying he's going to, start executing wealthy people. It's still his fault. And it's still the campaign's fault in this regard as well. And that's why I brought forward the point that, like, you can have $1.5 billion, right? Mm-hmm. You can have ground game. None of that matters if the message is not actually addressing the real issues that Americans are facing. And the reason why I think the Republicans can, go out and vote for the Republican Party and don't usually sit it out, I guess, and instead are able to say, suck it up and say, yeah, we're still going to vote for Donald Trump, is because there are single issue voters out there, and Trump, they know that Trump is going to protect it. People that like guns are going to be like, I like my guns. I want my guns to be protected. I want to be able to marry my gun. I want to be able to have sex with my gun. Mm-hmm. I know Donald Trump is going to be the guy that lets that happen. And I know the Democrats are going to, shun me for wanting to have sex with my gun. So that guy's...
By the way, chat, the woke left
is going to go and vote for Trump regardless, right? On the other side, though, if your top line communication and your major policy prescriptions are like, we have to preserve these institutions, we have to preserve civility, and we have to preserve democracy at a time when Americans are like, I don't give a fuck about democracy, just lower the price of eggs, then there's no way that I could outflank the Democratic Party and get people to vote for Kamala Harris that in a way that sticks, in a way that is going to be successful, no matter how much influence I wield.
It's not. Yeah, I'm not even just talking about. Yes, take your point.
Most people are just not voting. That's the problem.
But the challenge, right, is that like there are like these three. Let's say you say there's these three kind of media ecosystems. There's the right wing one. There's the kind of mainstream one, and there's the left one. The one on the right is built to attack Democrats. The one in the middle is built to attack Washington and politics, and the one on the left is built to attack Democrats. It is. I mean, like, I think they're trying to pressure Democrats to be a more moral.
Okay, so here's the thing. That conception is completely wrong. The right wing, both the politicians and the base, are integrated. And the Republican Party is constantly measuring itself against what the base is saying and triangulating between electoral viability and what the base is saying. They're constantly adjusting and pulling the Republican Party toward the base position. Donald Trump is the ultimate representation of that. He represents exactly what the base wants. The mainstream politics, coverage, the news, the mainstream media, they are pathological neutrality. Democrats say this, Republicans say that. But what Democrats do they show? Right-wing corporate Democrats. What Republicans do they show? Trumpian Republicans and corporate Republicans. They get equal billing. And that pathological neutrality allows that right-wing media ecosystem to continually influence what's going on in centrist media and keep all frames perpetually in the Republican frame. And then left-wing media is despised by the Democratic Party because it's calling for a reorganization and a redistribution of wealth and power in this country. It's calling for progress. It's calling for change. The corporate centrists want to maintain the status quo, so they despise their base. They turn away from their base. They're trying to discipline their base. They're trying to contain their base. It's not that the left wing hates the Democrats. It's that the Democrats hate the left.
unjust version of itself.
I think I probably spend more time shitting on the Republican Party than the Democratic Party, but yeah,
But I'm saying when we're talking about, like, when the right is talking,
I don't disagree.
when
I
right-wing media
completely
is
disagree.
trying to be
By the
a
way,
team player.
this is Hasan's biggest L. This is Hasan's biggest L. He's adopting this frame, and it's completely wrong. This frame is completely wrong. The problem is that the left shitting on Democrats, you fucking cowardly bitch. It's the Democrats don't address their base. Like, and I'm not calling Hasan a bitch. I'm calling fucking Pod Save America geek a bitch.
And it is attacking Democrats and supporting Republicans. The middle is attacking both, and the left is attacking Democrats and Republicans. There is no place, right? There is no, like, big kind of fun, exciting media environment outside of, I guess, fucking this table, where, like, you have a lot of people that are, like, critical of the Democratic Party, like, annoyed by the same things we're talking about, but ultimately it's just like, we got to win and we have to get behind these people.
Yeah. Well, but again, it is because for many people on the right-wing ecosystem, like, they have their toys, they have their treats, and the Republicans are giving them those toys and those treats, whereas the Democrats are offering what?
No, I agree. That's
like,
where
what
I'm
are
like,
they offering?
Hell yeah, Hasan. Thank you. He saved it. He saved it.
Yeah, no, I know. We got to fucking figure it out.
It doesn't matter to me. I'm rich. Okay. Like, I mean, I probably might go to prison if Project Esther gets kicked in, or if they denaturalize me or something. But
hey, come on.
You know, I mean, who knows? We'll see. But
you can, I mean, you can be rich abroad.
That is true.
What are you talking
my
about?
point is, but I like being here. I like trying to solve some of the problems in America at least.
And then, and like,
but
food's
overall,
good,
the point is not that I'm rich. The point is that the point I'm making is that, like, I care about my fellow Americans. I care about them, their lives getting better. They're improving their material conditions, and I recognize that if Democrats keep losing, then Republicans are going to keep ruining this country further. And I want the Democrats to win. I want to be the most regime-pilled propaganda minister you've ever seen.
That's what I want for you.
But I can't do that if the Democratic Party is not offering anything.
I guess what here's what I think.
No, he's like, if everybody pretends the Democrats are great, then that'll be awesome. Except the problem is California. Like, people are walking around and they live life in New York City and California, and they can't build a subway stop, and they can't build affordable housing that people actually want to live in, and they can't clean up the smog, and they can't build a single rail of high-speed rail in a fucking decade from two of the wealthiest concentrations of humanity in the planet. If the Democrats are so fucking great and they deserve regime propaganda, how come they can't do anything right?
That's all fair. I guess, like, where I'm like, what I'm trying to see is, like, what is the path to the Democrats creating the kind of story that's backed by candidates, that's backed by message, that's backed by policy, that's backed by having the right enemies, telling that kind of story, right? And then in concert with that, like, it is a kind of, like, we do need a kind of, like, virtuous circle where then more and more people in left media start to accept that the vehicle for changing this country for the better is the Democratic Party.
If we were consistently critical, I mean, I can't speak for everybody else on the left. I don't know who you're talking about when you say this, but, like, I can speak to my friends that are over at Drop Site News, former Intercept guys like Jeremy Scahill and Ryan Grimm. I can speak to Majority Report that was way more in the tank for Kamala than I was, for sure. Like, they were very openly more excited at the prospect of Kamala Harris.
This motherfucker doesn't mention me. That's fucked up.
Definitely a lot more depressed by no matter who wins, we're still cooked. Was my attitude, but, like, certainly understanding and recognizing that Donald Trump is going to be far worse than Kamala Harris, of course, and Chapo Trap House, right? So these are some of the largest media companies out there on the left, right, outside of the orbit of the Democratic Party. Every single one of these outlets, myself included, talked more about the Biden administration's accomplishments with the NLRB, with Lena Khan at the FTC, with, like, trust busting, and numerous other accomplishments that the Democratic Party actually brought forward.
Transmission gaps stall U.S. renewable energy progress. The U.S. renewable energy sector struggles due to insufficient power transmission infrastructure threatening decarbonization efforts. The U.S. continues to rely heavily on natural gas, raising concerns about price volatility and energy security. The U.S. renewable energy sector struggles to expand due to inadequate power transmission infrastructure. They just blocked a transmission line because of lack of community involvement. Blocked transmission line community involvement. Here's another one. Governor Kathy Hochul vetoes bill that would expedite wind farm off Long Island. Democrats, man, they're delivering for you.
Than they did, and it didn't matter. My point is, we always defended the Afghan withdrawal unconditionally. You never saw that you barely saw that on MSNBC. We always defended that. We always defended Lena Khan. We always defended the NLRB. We always defended the symbolic move that Joe Biden made when he went to the UAW picket line. We didn't forget that. We talked about that. It didn't matter. It's not enough, especially when there's so much that Joe Biden did, I think, outside of the economic pressures that Americans were experiencing that was certainly going to play a pivotal role in the election. But there's so much that he did in the month of October in 2023 that just completely wiped that made it impossible to defend him because it became the major focus of a lot of people. And there's nothing you can do in that moment when people are, seeing exactly what's going on and getting frustrated. He unveiled the right-wing immigration bill on October 5th, 2023. If I might be getting the date wrong, but it was like literally 2 days before October 7th. He did that, and then October 7th happened, and he went and he bear hugged Netanyahu and kept giving, unlimited weapons to Israel over and over again, never restraining Israel. Everybody knew exactly what was going to happen. It had happened before, and it was going to be much worse. And yet, no restraint whatsoever. And it has, I think, diminished America's soft power capabilities on the global stage further. It has eroded America's influence and soft power capabilities in the Western world. Obviously, the global South already knew what was up. They've always known, but they have no power. They have no voice. It doesn't matter. But the populations in Western Europe recognizing what was going on and actually starting to protest against it, I mean, that's different. I'm saying this as someone who's been an advocate for Palestinian emancipation for the past 10 years publicly. I've never seen this groundswell of this massive sea change, this attitude shift in such a dramatic fashion over the course of the last 12 months, and they did not address that at all. And instead, they hugged and kissed neocons and talked about, even in the VP debate, like Israel having the nuclear first strike capability. What an insane conversation we're having after 12 months of genocide. Like, that's, Americans fancy themselves to be peaceful people. It's a lie. America's foreign interventions are anything but peaceful. And but even then, the media ecosystem usually just shelters Americans from the genuine devastating impact of America's actions globally. But for that reason, Americans can at least feel like they're peaceful doves, which is why Donald Trump, despite never being a peaceful dove, was able to effectively communicate that he was actually anti-Iraq war against Hillary Clinton in 2016, which was a resilient message that actually showcased him as more moderate than Hillary Clinton in the eyes of many Americans. He did 4 years of no peaceful dove shit whatsoever, and then he turned around and after October 7 was still able to effectively outflank the Democrats on this issue, despite the fact that he got $100 million from Miriam Adelson, Sheldon Adelson's wife, to potentially annex the West Bank and put rabid evangelical freaks like Mike Huckabee as the Israeli ambassador. Like, these guys are insane.
It's why it's very heartbreaking for me too. look, like I think one of the reasons people will be mad that you're on the show is because you're like a proud anti-Zionist, right? Like you said that. I've gotten shit for
I thought you
saying.
were going to say anti-Semite. I was like, damn.
Joining us today, anti-Semite dumbass.
Yeah.
No, but but like I actually like a couple like 2 or 3 years ago, I said on Pod Save America like that I described myself as a Zionist, which got people upset too. But what I said then and what I still say now is, and I actually had the same conversation with Bernie, is like you ought to denounce the destruction and death in Gaza. You ought to denounce the moral abomination that is taking over the West Bank on its own terms, because it is morally reprehensible.
Yeah.
It is despicable. It is these are war crimes being committed against innocent Palestinians who are paying with their lives for the crimes of Hamas, and like you don't need to go further than that.
No one was upset they had an anti-Zionist on in the comments. No shit, because the only people that are extreme freaks on Israel are all voting for Trump. They're not watching Pod Save America unless they're being paid to as an op. He's putting in a lot of filler words. You want to have a debate on Israel? I think not.
Saying is, it is also terrible for Israel, and you don't need to care about that.
No, I agree.
No, I know.
I do care about that.
And like what Bernie said, I always appreciate what he has to say on this issue. When he said is that basically even Israel does not understand the way in which they're becoming an isolated pariah nation, and so people will be mad to have someone who is a self-proclaimed anti-Zionist on this show, but like I am someone who has called himself a Zionist, and I am against this because I believe it doesn't serve Israel's interest either. And that to me is what is so devastating about the outcome of this election, in part because of policy, in part because Joe Biden is such an kind of incomprehensible messenger on one of the most delicate and contentious topics in American politics. We now have Donald Trump, who is able to allied what his actual views would be on this issue. And it, like, you know, we have seen what happens in Israel when you have someone like Trump in power at a moment of crisis. And now there is Trump back in office here. And if you are concerned about the lives of Palestinians, if you're concerned about continuing instability and violence and death in that region, this election has just made everything so much fucking worse.
American foreign policy being so uniparty on this issue is genuinely frustrating, and it's genuinely damaging for Israel, because we recognize how our fellow Americans are becoming more reactionary every single day, especially with this new Trump election. You see people that formerly maybe had different opinions go, you know what, maybe it is good to deport 20 million people violently by utilizing the military potentially. This is something that the Donald Trump administration has said they're going to do.
Well, at the very least, even if people don't believe that'll happen or didn't understand, like, these things are not there. These things are not like the expectation that Donald Trump taking all of these extreme positions would be enough. Wasn't. That just wasn't true.
Yeah. So I what I'm trying to explain here is that before you know it, people can succumb to reactionary feelings and reactionary sentiment and find themselves in the throes of fascist ideology without even recognizing it. And I think examining that is important in an academic setting. And that's why we have Holocaust studies, right? That's why we have genocide studies as an entire field, to specifically understand exactly how Nazi Germany got to that position, or fascist Italy got to the position that it got to. And I think that, you know, you might even disagree with me on this, but like, that's where Israel is. That's where Israel is at right now. They have become an incredibly angry culture, an incredibly angry country that has succumbed, especially since the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, who wasn't exactly a great guy for Palestinians either. I mean, he was known as the guy who deliberately tasked the Israeli security forces in breaking the hands of children for stone throwing, right, in the first Intifada. That guy was the off-ramp for peace negotiations with Palestinians, and they assassinated him. And his assassins and people who are backing his assassins, like Itamar Ben-Gvir, like Bezalel Smotrich, are now firmly a part of the Israeli establishment, the current governing
Israeli
coalition.
government. Yeah, well, there are also hundreds of thousands of Israelis who have protested this government.
Yeah, for different reasons, but yeah, no, for sure.
Yes, and again, like, I just think it's important. Yes, like, Israel is responsible for Israel's actions, but we do need to separate Benjamin Netanyahu and his conduct from.
Okay, the two-state solution is not real for a variety of reasons. Number one, Israelis have already illegally occupied and taken some prime land in the West Bank. So the idea of what, we're going to dislodge them, or we're going to have land swaps with quality land, so that means deleting land from Israel and giving that's not happening. Okay, number one, that's just number one, not happening. Two, they're not going to treat Palestine like a real independent state. Are they going to let Palestine get nuclear weapons? Are they going to let Palestine get a military? Are they going to let Palestine have a navy? Are they going to let Palestine have open diplomatic relations with other countries? That's not happening either. They want a rump state. They want a Bantustan, like they had in South Africa. That was the black. See, South Africa is the white country, and there are black countries, and they have these like little non-entity states that have no rights. Number three, why the fuck do we want to support a segregated ethno-state? That is not liberalism. That is not, there's no human universals. There's nothing special about being Jewish that means you need to have an ethno-state that discriminates on people, against people on the basis of their race or religion. That's insane. Are there countries in the world that do horrifying racism and evil discrimination? Yes. Do those same countries get $300 billion in American aid when they're a rich country? No, they do not. So that's why the one-state solution is the only solution that makes sense. Okay, I'll give you an example of what a compromise would be. Everybody in Israel is a citizen now. All refugees can return to Israel. Compensation is paid for to the refugees from Israel and the United States who were displaced from their homes. In circumstances where people can reclaim their land, they can reclaim their land. There could be a mix of repatriation, redistribution of land, monetary-based compensation, a settlement, right? Everybody there is an equal citizen under the law. Everyone has religious conscience. It's a secular state. However, there's we can make a proviso, an immigration proviso. Any Palestinian or Jewish person who wishes to return to Palestine and Israel has the right to do so. Has the right to immigrate there. Bingo, bango, boom. If you're a Palestinian in Lebanon, you can return. If you're a Palestinian in Jordan, you can return. If you're a Jewish person in Long Island, you can move to Israel, Palestine if you want. Wow, Mike arguing for settlements? No, I'm not arguing for settlements. I'm arguing for a resolution that is sane, which is a one-state solution. I forgot the sarcasm. Yeah. That's the only thing that makes sense. That's the only thing that's fair and equitable. The idea that the Jewish people need to have one state where they're supreme is insane.
The Israeli people, in the same, that doesn't mean they're not responsible in the same way that America is not George W. Bush, right? But America is responsible for what George W. Bush.
Yes, we are. America is George W. Bush. He was our president. He was elected by our stupid system, and he did stuff in our name, and our taxes paid for it.
Yeah.
When he is in command
Who
of
rules the state? The democratically elected representatives of that state. Political parties will rise up. They pledge allegiance to the state. They put forward representatives. And then whoever gains a majority in the parliament can pick a prime minister. And if it's a block of parties or a coalition of parties, they form a prime minister. It'll probably would be some sort of center-left secular Arab-Jewish alliance. And the right wings would be marginalized. Because, people's lives were getting better and there was a promotion of goodwill. That's exactly what would happen. Spider Bike, thank you for the tier 1 and the 10 gifties. You're the best.
Armed forces.
Yeah.
But we understand that distinction.
No, of course. The problem is you have to also look at the Overton window, though, in any society, in any culture, in any country, right? And I think that, and I come from, I'm Turkish. Like, I come from a country with a conscription. Like, I understand what ultranationalism is. I've lived through it. I've experienced it. I know what it's like when Turkish people hear me say, like, that the Armenian genocide is real, for example. Like, that's like a non-starter, right? That's like, you can't say that. What are you talking about? I learned in school that it wasn't real, right? Like, I understand how a country can become more and more right-wing, where even the liberal position is still committed to the maintenance of an apartheid. And I think that is where we're at with Israel, and we have to restrain Israel as we are the number one partner of Israel.
We are their patron. Israel can't do what they're doing without the United States. Like, Israel as it exists now can only exist because the United States supports it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
She has no idea who Mike is.
Mike. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you are. But your name will start changing your ways. Change your ways. We're changing your name. Change